Hello everyone, welcome to Frightful Whispers. I'm here to guide you into the shadows tonight. I know you're using this video to unwind and drift off to sleep. So, before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Where are you watching from? And what time is it for you? Now, get cozy, relax, and let the whispers of the night take over. I stepped out of the cab, the cool night air immediately biting at my skin. The city was quieter than I expected, eerily quiet for a place like this. My heels clicked sharply against the damp pavement, each step seeming louder than the last. My mind was already preoccupied with the long meetings and endless emails I'd left behind for this brief, much-needed escape. I was just another businesswoman chasing after deadlines, always on the move. But as I stood outside the Elmwood Hotel, something felt off. The hotel wasn't much to look at, small, tucked away at the corner of a street, its once grand appearance now fading into the shadows of the night. But still, there was something about it that drew me in. A pull I couldn't quite explain. It wasn't the grandeur of its exterior, no. It was the kind of charm that only time and memories could build. And yet, there was something unsettling about it, as if the place was waiting for me. I pushed open the heavy oak door and was greeted by the scent of aged wood mixed with something floral, almost too sweet. The lobby was dim, the low lighting casting soft golden hues across the room. It was quiet here too quiet, like the hotel itself was holding its breath. My footsteps echoed through the marble floor, each step reverberating in the emptiness. A desk sat at the far end of the room, polished mahogany gleaming under the light. No one was behind it at first, but then, almost as if summoned, a man appeared. His features were sharp, too perfect, like someone who was trying to appear warm, but couldn't quite pull it off. "Good evening, ma'am," he said, his voice polite but distant. "Checking in?" I nodded, offering my name, the practiced rhythm of business travel taking over. He tapped away on a keyboard with slow, deliberate movements, the sound of the keys almost magnified in the silent room. After what felt like an eternity, he looked up. "Ah, yes. Room 306, right down the hall," he said, his smile small, unreadable. He handed me the key, a solid brass number that felt unnervingly heavy in my hand, as if it were more than just a simple key. There was something ancient about it, like it belonged to a place much older than the hotel itself. "Thank you," I murmured, turning to leave. But as I walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that the receptionist wasn't quite there. His gaze, empty, seemed to follow me as I crossed the lobby. But when I looked back, he had already returned to his desk, eyes down, as if I had never existed. The hallway stretched before me, narrow and dark, the red carpet muted underfoot. As I walked, the air grew colder, and I could feel the weight of the silence pressing in from all sides. The walls, lined with faded paintings, seemed to watch me as I passed, the eyes of the portraits flickering in and out of my vision. The flickering light overhead only made the shadows seem longer, deeper. When I reached the end of the hall, I stopped dead in my tracks. My heart skipped a beat. Where was it? The door to room 306 wasn't there. I blinked. Maybe I misread the number. But no, I hadn't. There was no room 306. I stepped closer, my gaze darting between the two doors at the end of the hall, 305 and 307, but room 306 was nowhere to be found. I turned back toward the receptionist, my stomach tightening with unease. Something wasn't right. "There's no room 306, I said, my voice trembling slightly. "It skips from 305 to 307. The receptionist barely lifted his eyes from the desk, his voice calm, as though he'd heard this all before. "Room 306 exists," he said flatly. "You must have missed it. It's just down the hall." But I had walked that hallway. I had seen the numbers. There was no room 306. "I'm telling you," I persisted, my voice growing firmer. "There's no room 306. It's not there." His expression didn't change. He didn't even blink. "Trust me, ma'am, room 306 is there. You'll see it." His voice had a strange, almost dismissive tone to it, as though he knew something I didn't, something I wasn't supposed to know. I took the key back from him with trembling hands. I wasn't sure what was going on, but something deep in my gut told me to follow through. It's just a mistake, I thought. It's nothing. But as I walked back down the hall, the air grew thicker, heavier. The shadows in the corners of the corridor stretched unnaturally, and the flickering light above now seemed to pulse with a strange rhythm. I reached the end of the hall again, and this time my breath caught in my throat. There it was. Room 306. The door that hadn't existed moments ago was now there, solid and real, staring back at me with its gleaming brass number. The key slid into the lock as though it had always belonged, and the door creaked open with a sound that felt too loud for the silence. The room inside was just as I'd expected, old-fashioned, simple. Yet there was something off about it. The air felt stagnant, frozen in time. The bed was neatly made, as if no one had ever touched it, but there was no warmth to the room, just a chill that wrapped around me like a heavy blanket. The curtains were drawn tight, the dim light from an old lamp casting long, distorted shadows across the room. And then I noticed it. A picture on the wall, faded, yellowed with age. A woman in the photograph smiling, but her eyes weren't right. They seemed to follow me, flickering with some unspoken understanding. Suddenly, a sharp sound broke the stillness. The door. It slammed shut behind me so forcefully that it rattled the walls. My heart lurched, and I spun around, reaching for the handle. It wouldn't budge. The door was locked. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I rushed to the window, but when I pulled the curtains aside, there was nothing but blackness outside. No city, no streetlights, just an endless void stretching in all directions. What the hell is going on? I turned back to the room, panic flooding my chest. And that's when I heard it. A voice, soft but chilling, whispering from the corner. "Welcome to my room." I froze. There, standing in the corner of the room, was the woman from the photograph. Only now, she was real. Her twisted smile spread across her face, her eyes cold and empty. "You, who are you?" I stammered, my voice shaking with fear. She stepped closer, her movement unnervingly slow. "I was just like you. I came here, looking for something, just like you. But now I'm part of this place. And soon, so will you." My legs felt like they might give out beneath me. I backed away, but no matter where I went, she followed, her eyes never leaving me. "You can't leave," she whispered, her voice growing louder, more insistent. "You must stay." Suddenly, the walls seemed to move, shifting around me as if the room itself were alive, breathing. The air grew colder, suffocating. I rushed to the door again, but it was no use. No matter how hard I pulled at the handle, it stayed locked. And as I turned back toward the room, I saw her standing in the doorway, smiling. "You found it," she said, her voice thick with something darker. "Now you must stay," I screamed. I walked back to the front desk, my footsteps echoing through the dimly lit hallway. My heart was pounding now, a steady drumbeat of unease that rattled through my chest. The air felt heavier, thicker, like it was pressing against me from all sides. Every step seemed to make the shadows around me grow deeper, more suffocating. There was something about this place, something that didn't feel right. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that I was caught in a web I couldn't escape. When I reached the front desk, I didn't know what I was hoping for: an explanation, an answer, some kind of sanity to cling to. But the receptionist didn't offer any of that. He was still there, still sitting behind the desk as though time had frozen for him. His fingers danced over the keyboard, the sound of the clicking keys sharp and cold in the silence, each tap seeming louder than the last. It was almost as if he was in a trance, locked in a pattern I couldn't understand. And when he looked up at me, his expression was the same: cold, distant, unfeeling. "Is something wrong, ma'am?" he asked, his voice flat and emotionless. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breath. "Yes," I said, my voice shaky. "There's no room 306. I looked down the hall. It's missing. I don't understand. Where is it?" His eyes flickered up at me, just for a second, before returning to the screen. There was something unnerving about the way he looked at me, as if he were seeing straight through me, into something I wasn't meant to understand. "Room 306 is there," he replied, his tone as if he were stating a simple fact, something that didn't warrant any further discussion. I felt a chill run down my spine. "But it's not. It's gone. I checked twice." His gaze remained locked on the screen, his fingers still moving with slow, deliberate precision. "Room 306 exists. You must have missed it. It's just down the hall." I blinked, my mind racing. There was no way I was imagining this. I'd walked the hall myself twice, and I knew what I had seen, or rather, what I hadn't seen. There was no room 306. "Look, I'm telling you," I said, my voice growing more insistent. "I've looked everywhere. There's nothing there. The numbers skip straight from 305 to 307. Where is room 306? The man didn't even flinch. He simply paused for a moment, his fingers hovering over the keyboard as if considering my words, but then he responded in the same monotone voice. "Room 306 is there. You just haven't seen it yet." I stared at him, feeling an icy knot form in my stomach. The air around me seemed to thicken, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. Something was off. Something wasn't right. Why was he so calm? Why was he insisting on something so clearly wrong? I didn't know what else to say, so I just stood there, the words caught in my throat. He met my eyes then, his gaze piercing, almost knowing. It was unsettling, like he could see right through me, straight to the heart of what I feared most. His lips curved into the faintest smile, a cold, detached expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Trust me," he said, his voice taking on a strange, almost hypnotic quality. "Room 306 is waiting for you. You'll see it." The words hung in the air between us, thick with some kind of unspoken meaning. My hands trembled as I took the key from the desk, its weight feeling heavier than it had before. The brass number 306 seemed to mock me, cold and unyielding, as though it belonged to something far older than the hotel itself. "Thank you," I managed to say, though the words felt wrong in my mouth, as though I were being pulled into something I couldn't escape. I turned away from the desk, my mind swirling with confusion. But as I did, I couldn't help but glance back. He hadn't moved. He was still sitting there, staring at me with those dark, endless eyes. And the lobby itself, looked different now. It wasn't just the strange quiet that hung in the air. No, it was more than that. It felt bigger. The space between the desk and the wall seemed to stretch out, as though the room had expanded when I wasn't looking. But I didn't have time to dwell on it. My legs felt heavy as I walked back down the hallway, each step seeming to take longer than the last. The weight of the air pressed against me. The walls seemed to close in. The hotel was alive now, alive in a way that I couldn't understand, and it was watching me. When I reached the end of the hallway again, I stopped in my tracks. There it was. Room 306, right where it hadn't been before. The door stood there, solid, real, and waiting for me. My breath caught in my throat. How? How could it have appeared? I had walked this hallway twice and seen that there was nothing here. And yet now, room 306 stood in front of me like it had always been here, beckoning me inside. I stepped forward, unable to tear my eyes away from the door. My hand trembled as I reached for the key, and when I slid it into the lock, it turned easily, too easily. The door creaked open with a sound that was too loud in the stillness, and I stepped inside. The room was exactly as I had imagined, old, dusty, and oddly still. But there was something else, something off, hanging in the air. The temperature had dropped, and I could feel the chill seeping into my bones. I glanced around, my mind racing, but there was no time to think. The moment I stepped further into the room, the door slammed shut behind me with a force that rattled the walls. I spun around, my heart hammering in my chest, and reached for the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. The door was locked. Panic surged through me, and I ran to the window, desperate for air. I yanked the curtains aside, but instead of the familiar view of the city, I was met with nothing. Just an endless void, stretching out into the darkness. I turned back toward the room, my breath coming in shallow gasps. And that's when I heard it. Welcome to my room. I froze. There, standing in the corner, was the woman from the photograph. Her twisted smile spread across her face, her eyes empty, hollow. You're not real, I gasped, backing away, but she just stepped closer, her presence closing in on me, suffocating me. I was just like you, she whispered. I came here to escape, just like you, but now I'm a part of this place, and soon, so will you. I wanted to scream, I wanted to run, but the room had already started to change, shifting around me like a living thing. And I realized, too late, that there was no escape, not anymore. The hotel had me, and it wasn't letting go. I stood there, heart hammering in my chest, staring at the door in front of me. Room 306, room 306. I had just walked down this hallway not 5 minutes ago, and there had been nothing. No door, no sign of this room. Yet now, here it was, solid and real, standing like a silent sentinel in front of me, its brass number gleaming under the dim hallway light. I reached for the key with trembling fingers, the weight of it far too heavy in my hand, as though it belonged to something much older than this hotel. The key slid into the lock with unnerving ease, and the door creaked open, the sound too loud in the suffocating silence. Stepping inside, a wave of coldness hit me, as if the room had been frozen in time. The temperature dropped sharply, making me shiver despite the warmth of my coat. The room was exactly what I expected, old, dusty, and covered in the remnants of what seemed like a forgotten past. But there was something more, something wrong about it. The air felt thick, oppressive, as though it didn't want me here. The bed was made perfectly, too perfectly. The sheets were crisp and white, but they looked unnervingly sterile, as though no one had ever slept there. The curtains were drawn tightly, blocking any light from the outside. The room was dim, bathed only in the cold, faint glow from a single lamp. I glanced around, my mind racing. I was being ridiculous, I told myself, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I couldn't explain it. The silence in the room was so complete, it felt like it was pressing in on me, like the room itself was alive and watching, waiting for something. The furniture was old, but not in a charming vintage way. It was wrong, out of place. It was as though someone had arranged it with no care at all, merely placing it in the room because it had to be there, not because it belonged. I moved deeper into the room, drawn toward the desk in the corner. The light flickered above me, casting long, eerie shadows on the walls. The desk was cluttered with old papers, the kind that looked like they hadn't been touched in years. But what caught my eye was the photo frame, sitting alone, half hidden beneath a pile of forgotten items. I picked it up, my hands shaking as I carefully lifted the cracked glass to look at the photo within. It was a woman. Her face was blurred by age, her features indistinct, but her eyes, those eyes, they stared back at me with an intensity that made my stomach flip. They were too real, too aware. It was as if she knew me, knew exactly who I was. Her smile was faint, twisted in a way that didn't feel kind, more like a cold, knowing smirk. I froze, my body stiffening with a sudden bone-deep chill. The room was wrong. This place, it was wrong. A dizzying sensation swirled in my head, and I felt my vision blur. My hands trembled as I set the photo back down, but as I did, the room seemed to shift. The walls felt closer now, like they were closing in, the air growing heavier, denser with every passing second. I spun around, desperate to leave, but then I heard it. A sound. It was faint at first, just a whisper, but as it grew louder, my breath caught in my throat. "Welcome to my room." I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I turned, and there, standing in the doorway, was her, the woman from the photograph. She wasn't just a picture anymore, she was real. Her smile was wider now, more twisted, her eyes dark and hollow. I don't understand." My voice trembled as I backed away, my legs weak beneath me. "Who are you?" She stepped closer, her movements slow and deliberate, her eyes never leaving mine. "I was once just like you," she whispered, her voice sweet but laced with something darker. "I checked into this hotel, thinking I was just passing through, thinking it was just another place, but now I'm part of it, and soon you will be too." My breath caught in my throat as I turned toward the door, desperate to escape, but it was too late. The moment I reached for the handle, I realized it was locked. Locked. Panic surged through me as I pulled at the handle, but it wouldn't give. My heart raced, my hands growing slick with sweat. I spun around again, looking for anything, any way out. But there was nothing. The walls seemed to close in on me, the room growing smaller, suffocating. I ran to the window, tearing the curtains open, desperate for air, but outside, there was nothing. No city lights, no street, just an endless void of blackness stretching out in all directions, as if the world itself had stopped. I felt a cold, sickening wave of dread wash over me as I realized something terrible. I wasn't just trapped in a room. I was trapped somewhere else. The woman's voice came again, closer now, filling the space around me, echoing in my mind. "You found the room. Now you must stay." Her smile was twisted, predatory. And in that moment I knew the terrible truth. I wasn't the first to find this room, and I wouldn't be the last. I turned to run, but the hallway outside was gone. The walls had closed in, and the door was no longer there. The hotel, the world, everything had become nothing. A labyrinth with no exit, no escape. And there was only one thing left for me to do: to become another lost soul in this cursed place, just like the woman who had greeted me. The room had found me, and now I would never leave. I couldn't breathe. The air was thick around me, pressing down with a weight I couldn't escape. My feet felt as though they were sinking into the floor, as if the room itself had become a living, breathing thing, holding me in place. I could feel the cold crawling under my skin, freezing me from the inside out, and every second that passed seemed to stretch on endlessly, caught in an eternal moment. I turned, desperate for some escape, but it felt like the walls were closing in. The room was exactly as it had been when I first entered, frozen, suspended in time, but there was something terribly off. The silence was suffocating, pressing against my chest, making it harder to breathe. The air felt stale, and yet it was as though it hadn't moved in years. The bed, perfectly made, the curtains drawn tight, the grandfather clock, ticking with an unnatural slowness, its hands forever frozen, unmoving, as if mocking the passage of time. The more I looked around, the more I realized nothing was right. Nothing. The shadows on the walls didn't shift. The furniture, untouched, was unnervingly still. It was as though the entire room was waiting for something or someone, and the longer I stood there, the more I felt like I was the thing that didn't belong. My legs were shaking, my body trembling with the cold, but I couldn't move. I couldn't leave. Then I saw her again. The woman, the one from the photograph. She was standing in front of me in the center of the room, her cold, hollow eyes staring into mine. Her smile was too wide, too knowing, stretching across her face like something that had been carved there, deep and permanent. Her presence seemed to fill the room, pressing against me from all sides, suffocating me. Her voice came again, soft but chilling. "You've entered. Now you are part of it, part of this moment, and this moment will never end." I tried to move, to run, but my feet wouldn't obey me. It felt like the floor was holding me in place, like I was trapped in the very fabric of the room. The cold seeped deeper into my bones, and I could feel time itself grinding to a halt. The ticking of the clock, no longer ticking, just stopped. The room was locked in this moment, frozen in time, and there was no escaping it. My heart hammered in my chest, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't force myself to move. It was as if my body had been paralyzed by the room itself, held captive by the stillness, by the weight of the air that was suffocating me. I looked around again, but the scene hadn't changed. The room was still perfect, still untouched. The shadows hadn't shifted. The light from the single lamp remained still, casting no warmth, only an eerie glow that made everything feel more unnatural, more wrong. And then it hit me. I wasn't in just any room. I wasn't even in time anymore. I had crossed into something far darker, something that existed outside the flow of time itself. I wasn't moving through time. I had been frozen, and now I was trapped, stuck here, in this moment, for eternity. I looked at her again, the woman who had once only been a photograph on the wall. She was smiling still, her smile widening until it was grotesque. Like something twisted inside her was pushing it farther and farther, stretching it into something monstrous. Her eyes were empty, hollow pits, but they were staring straight through me, into my soul. "You see," she whispered, her voice soft, like a lullaby. "This is where you belong now. This moment, this room. Time doesn't exist here, it doesn't move here, and neither will you." I wanted to scream. I wanted to fight, to break free from this suffocating grip that the room had on me, but no sound escaped. My voice was lost in the endless silence that had settled around me, thick and impenetrable. The walls seemed to close in closer, tighter, until I felt as though they were pressing against my chest, threatening to crush me. The room had stopped. The world had stopped. Time had stopped. And I was the one left behind, suspended in it, frozen like the clock that hung in the corner, forever stuck at that one moment, forever stuck with her. And then, as the cold seeped deeper into my bones, I realized There was no escape. There was no way out. This room, this place, it was timeless, and I was part of it now. The woman's smile never wavered, never faltered. I was trapped, frozen, and I would never leave. Time had stopped, and so had I. I felt her before I saw her. The air grew thicker, heavier, and for a split second I could have sworn the walls themselves were closing in on me. The cold seeped in deeper, colder than before, wrapping around my chest and squeezing the breath out of me. It wasn't the usual cold from the room. It was different, more intense, more alive. And in that suffocating air, I knew something had changed. Then, I saw her. At first, it was just a flicker in the corner of my vision, like a shadow slipping between cracks in the room. But then she stepped forward, fully materializing. The woman standing in front of me as though she had emerged from the very walls themselves. Her eyes, dark and hollow, locked onto mine with an intensity that made my stomach twist. Her clothes were faded, worn, like they hadn't been touched by time in 100 years. Her hair was dark and wild, hanging in loose strands around her face, as though she hadn't bothered to care for it in ages. She moved slowly, like she was made of the same heavy, suffocating air as the room. She didn't walk. She glided, drifting toward me with an eerie, deliberate grace, as if the ground beneath her didn't even matter. I tried to speak, but my mouth felt dry, my words trapped somewhere deep inside my chest. She didn't give me a chance to ask who she was, though. Her voice came first, soft but edged with something dark, something ancient. "I knew you would come," she said, her voice carrying an impossible sadness. There was no comfort in her words, only a chilling recognition. It felt as though the room itself had whispered her name, had called her. "I've been waiting for you." My heart skipped a beat. Waiting for me? The air grew colder still, and I took an instinctive step back, my legs shaky beneath me. But there was nowhere to go. The room, the hallway, everything felt like it was closing in. The walls seemed to draw tighter, and I felt my breath quicken, my chest constricting in fear. "Don't you remember?" she continued, her smile curling at the edges. But it wasn't kind. It was empty, hollow. "You're just like I was. I was you once. I thought I could leave too." I didn't understand. Leave? Leave what? Before I could gather my thoughts, she stepped closer, her face just inches from mine. Her presence filled the room, and I couldn't escape it. I tried to move, but it was as if I was rooted to the spot, the room, the air, the very floor beneath me. Everything was holding me here. "You don't remember, do you?" Her smile widened. "I came here too. I thought it was just another stop, another hotel. I thought it would be like any other night. I thought I could leave after a good night's sleep. But this place..." She paused, her eyes locking onto mine, and for a moment I felt like I was drowning in them. "This place doesn't let you go. It takes everything. It takes you." My stomach dropped. Something in her words pierced me deep, like a whisper from a forgotten memory. Her words began to settle in, and I realized she wasn't just speaking about the room, she was speaking about the hotel. I stumbled back, my mind racing for some explanation, but there was nothing. The reality I had known, time, life, escape, seemed to have slipped away, dissolved into the very air around me. I opened my mouth to say something, but the words never came. It was like my voice had been stolen, replaced with the suffocating stillness of the room. She stepped forward again, her presence overwhelming. "Once you step inside, you're part of it, part of the room. You think you can leave, but you can't. You don't leave. No one ever leaves." Her words hit me like a punch. I felt my knees tremble, my body threatening to collapse, but I couldn't look away. Her eyes were pulling me in, drawing me into a truth I didn't want to hear but couldn't deny. "You'll understand soon enough," she whispered, her voice chilling with finality. "Just like I did. You thought you were just passing through, didn't you? Thought it was just another stop, another hotel. But you're wrong. You're already part of it now." The room seemed to pulse with her words, the air thickening, tightening. My breath grew shallow, and I could feel the walls closing in. Everything was pressing in, suffocating me. Her eyes bored into me, stripping away the last of my resistance. "I tried to leave," she continued, her voice growing softer, tinged with the sadness that twisted in my chest. "I thought I could escape. But you can't. You can't ever leave. You belong here now, just like I do, just like we all do." Her smile turned grim, and in that moment I saw it. She wasn't just a woman, she was a warning. A warning from someone who had been trapped here, just like I would be, forever. Her face twisted, and I could see it then, the same terror, the same realization in her eyes. "You're part of it now," she said, "and there's no going back." Suddenly, the walls seemed to pulse again, the air thicker, colder, and her presence, it was everywhere. I was trapped, stuck in the room with her, with the knowledge of what I had walked into. Time had stopped. Life had stopped. I was no longer just a visitor here, I had crossed a line. And now, just like her, I would be bound to this place, to this room, forever. There was no escape. There never had been. And as the room swallowed me whole, as the air pressed down around me, I understood what she meant. I had become part of room 306, and I would never leave. I can feel it now, the weight of the room pressing down on me, wrapping around me like a shroud. The air feels heavier with each passing moment, thick with something I can't quite name, something that suffocates, something that clings. I've lost track of time, lost track of everything. My mind is swirling, but all I can do is keep walking, my feet dragging along the carpet, the sounds of my footsteps echoing in the hallway. The same hallway, it never ends, it's always the same. Every turn I make, I end up in front of the same door, room 306. I've walked it, what feels like, thousands of times, over and over. The hallway stretches out before me and I walk. The same steps, the same distance, the same air, but it's not the same. No, it can't be. I try the door again and again and again. Every time I touch the handle, I pull, I push, I twist and turn with every ounce of strength left in me, but it stays locked. There's nothing I can do. It's as though the room is mocking me, like it's daring me to try again. And every time the hallway shifts, the walls warp. I look behind me and the hallway's gone, twisted into a reflection of something I can't recognize, something wrong. The doors, the walls, the floor, they change, they move, they stretch and bend in ways they shouldn't. And the more I try, the further I seem to get from the truth. It's like a nightmare I can't wake up from. No matter what I do, I always end up at the same door, room 306. Always. I press my palm against the wood, feeling the chill seep into my skin. This room, it's everything. It's the only thing I can see, the only thing I can feel. I press my ear to it, waiting for any sound, any sign of life, any movement. But it's silent. The silence that surrounds me is suffocating, deafening. And I realize it's not just the room that's silent. It's the world outside. "Why won't you let me out?" I whisper, my voice shaking as the words pass my lips. But there's no answer, no response. The only sound now is the thudding of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears, faster, harder, like it's trying to break free, like it knows I'm trapped, like it knows I'm slipping. I turn, ready to walk again, but before I take a single step, I hear it, a soft whisper. You're not going anywhere. The voice is soft, a mere whisper, but it comes from everywhere, as if the room itself is speaking to me. And then the walls shift again, expanding, the hallway stretching further, distorting, until it's unrecognizable. The edges blur, and I know that I've been here before. I've walked this hallway so many times. It doesn't matter how far I walk, how many times I try. The hallway loops back on itself, and I always find myself standing in front of the same door, the same room, the same cold, unyielding door that won't open. I feel the pressure building in my chest, the panic rising with every breath. "Let me out!" I scream this time, my voice rising, desperate. "Please, let me out!" But the voice comes again, like a cold, familiar hand gripping my throat. "You're already here," it whispers. "You've always been here." My heart stops. My mind goes blank. I stagger back, my eyes wide, searching the empty hallway for something, anything, that might give me a sense of reality. But there's nothing. Just the same door, just the same hallway. "Don't you see?" the voice continues, its tone laced with something dark, something that makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. "This is your reality now. This is all that's left for you." I reach for the door again, my hand trembling, but it's useless. The door doesn't budge, it doesn't give. I pull with all my strength, but I can feel it now. I'm not meant to leave. I'm never meant to leave. The hallway around me seems to grow even darker, more oppressive, and I realize that the space isn't just closing in, it's alive. It's growing, shifting, distorting itself to trap me here. The walls aren't just walls anymore. They are part of the loop, part of the cycle that keeps me here forever. I turn back, my hands shaking as I try the door again, but I know now. I know that the room doesn't want me to leave. It never wanted me to leave. It wanted me to stay forever. And that's when it hits me, the truth, the horrible, suffocating truth. The hallway doesn't end, there's no escape, there's no way out of this place. I've been walking in circles, trapped in a loop. Room 306 isn't just a room, it's the world I'm stuck in. A world where time doesn't exist, where the hallway stretches endlessly, looping over and over, trapping me in this endless nightmare. I look down at my hands, feeling the cold seep deeper into my skin, and I realize something else. I'm already inside the room. I've always been inside. The door has never been locked. I've always been locked in here. I've always been a part of it. The walls, the door, the hallway, they are me. And as the door looms before me once again, as I stretch my hand toward it, I realize that nothing has changed. I will never leave. I will never escape. This is my reality now. The loop will never end. Thank you for venturing into the shadows with me here at Frightful Whispers. Remember, the darkness holds secrets, but also whispers truths to those who dare to listen. If tonight's tale sent shivers down your spine, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. It helps keep the fire of fright alive. Rest easy, but keep one eye open, for the night is never truly still. Until we meet again, stay vigilant, stay curious, and let the whispers guide you.